Gonna get started, everybody. It's 5:30. Welcome. We have a packed agenda, very exciting agenda, and we're gonna go ahead and get started now. And with that, we're going to start with Lynn for a roll call.
Ken Warner,
Here.
Laura Oblinger,
Here.
Jody Lundquist,
Here.
Tyler Weaver,
Here.
Andy Robichuk, Pam Horn,
Here.
Mark Healy.
Here. Thank you, Lynn. And if you could, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And a review of the agenda, trustees. Is there any additions, deletions, rearrangements of the agenda?
No.
None? Okay, thank you. And we are going to get started today. Very excited to hear from Hannah Rodriguez, Student Success Coordinator for our Mission and Values in Action. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Well, good evening all, and thanks for the invitation to share today. My name is Hannah Rodriguez, and I'm NMC's Student Success Coordinator. I have the privilege of leading the success coaching team and working with all of our faculty and staff on campus to build and sustain strong systems of support for our students. I was invited to join you this evening to share the story of a student I've had the privilege of coaching this past academic year, not only because her story is inspiring and represents the tenacity and resilience of so many of our students on our campus, but also because it really demonstrates how our institutional values shape the work we do daily and how that work meets our mission of transforming lives and enriching our communities. This student finished her high school diploma through an adult education program in January of 2025. Then, with her 3 children, moved to Traverse City the following summer to start at NMC. And her first introduction to our campus was participating in our College Edge program, which allowed her to build foundational skills in English and math, supported her knowledge of campus resources that promote success, and in her words, empowered her to take advantage of all that NMC has to offer and gave her the confidence that she belonged in an academic environment. As a single mother trying to pursue her education and take care of her children's needs without a personal network of support nearby, she faces a lot of barriers that often inhibit a student's academic success, and many that, even with our robust resources, we simply can't remove entirely. There are some, however, that when weaving values like innovation, collaboration, and excellence into our work, we can at least diminish. Through her participation in College Edge and in our success coaching appointments, the student has been connected with many of the friendly faces on our campus, including our employment readiness specialist, Lisa Valdega. Lisa originally met with the student to talk about employment options that were flexible enough to meet her needs, but in that meeting, she was able to connect her with a lot more. Lisa learned that the student's tires weren't safe to continue driving on throughout the winter and reached out to her connections in the community to see what other support might be possible. Through some collaboration, Lisa was able to get the student a new set of tires and have them installed at a rate the student could afford. So while this level of support is not always possible, and new tires might not seem directly related to student success, it greatly impacted this individual's ability to care for her family, attend class here on campus, and finish her first semester in college with a 3.75 GPA. While there are many stories like these here at NMC, our systems aren't without challenges, and there are days when it feels like there are more losses than wins, but I continue to appreciate and take pride in the strong systems of support we have and the values that guide us as we implement them. Keeping students centered in our efforts and staying focused on our values fills me with purpose, and I know makes for classrooms, offices, a campus, and an institution that's truly meeting its mission. So thank you for letting me share today.
Fantastic, Hannah. Thank you so much. Please, if you don't mind, stay there for just a
Sure.
moment. Well done, first of all. Thank you so much. That was so well done. And I think it's, my mom, single mom, I think it's so inspiring to the children to see mom struggle and to make it. So thank you so much for sharing that story. It's really inspiring.
Yes, thank you for letting me, and thanks to her for allowing me to share her story as well.
Trustees, any questions for Hannah? Ken?
Yeah, that was a wonderful presentation. I would like to hear a little bit about what you see as the problems with student success coaching at this point, whether it's number of personnel or ability to contact students. You know, how many students are being served effectively, and how many could be served effectively with the resources that we now have?
Sure, great question. In terms of how many students are being served currently, in success coaching, we see about 10% of our overall headcount. When we look at those numbers, we would love to increase that. Some of the barriers honestly have to do with students want to connect with those resources. So we do a lot to provide outreach. We're really present at orientation. We connect with every single student afterward with at minimum an email and a phone call to get them into our coaching supports. In terms of the challenges, it is capacity. We, of course, would love to have more of that to be able to do more of the outreach. Coaching, unlike something like advising, is not required. There isn't sort of a barrier that says, you know, you have to meet with a coach in order to move forward on this piece. And that's a double-edged sword. It's not something that I think we're interested in doing to say this is a must. But, you know, always looking at opportunities to find those connections and points of engagement. We receive a lot of our appointments through referrals from faculty and other staff. Those warm handoffs and connections make a big difference for students. But of course, are always looking for opportunities to grow our program and our connection. But finding that threshold of where it makes sense and really moving the needle on that percent of our headcount that we're seeing, I think is a first step to saying, you know, here's a place where we need to grow our capacity further.
And what's the FTE right now for student success coaches?
It's 2 full-time staff and myself. We have 1 open position at the moment. So I've been filling in a couple of roles this past semester while we're working to fill those full-time positions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for Hannah? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next we are going to hear from, very excited to hear from the Student Government Association with your annual report to the board.
First thing I wanted to say for the student success, as a student, you guys send out 2 emails twice a year, I believe. It's always at a time when I'm struggling the most. I think it's like 3 weeks into classes and also right around this time of year. I really appreciate that, so thank you guys. Also for student resources, as a student, NMC, the student resources that we can get here specifically, Christy Welch helped me with my resume as well as the food pantry. 2 things as a student that have helped me out a ton, so the resources here are amazing. This is student government. And let's give our presentation, guys. All right, I'm Ava Boomy. I am the president of student government. I have been a part of student government for the last 2 years or so, and I'm an engineering student. Vice President Jonathan.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Bukowski. This is my first year here at NMC, and I am currently in the program for a Associates in Applied Sciences in Engineering Tech, specifically electronics. And I'm secretary.
I'm Riley Kulikowski. I'm a pre-med student, part-time. So this should be my last semesters here at NMC. Just started at an SGA this spring. Student treasurer.
I'm Sebastian Ethan Ellison. I'm a treasurer. I am currently doing dual enrollment through Grand Valley State University, doing a bachelor's in allied health sciences with a minor in political science. This is my first year at NMC and in student government.
I'm Jace Dunlap. I do PR and public relations. I am a early college student through West High School, and this is my 13th year of high school through West. I am going to be at NMC again next semester pursuing English with a hope in pursuing journalism later down the line.
I'm Eliana, one of the voting members for SGA. This is my second year here at SGA, and I am in the aviation program here at NMC.
And my name is Monique Tangi. This is my third year here. I'm due to graduate this semester with 2 degrees, one in technology and the other in psychology.
And we also have Allie, Lisa, and Marcus are advisors. Amazing people, they've taught me a lot. All right, so what have we been up to with student government? So one of the things with student government that I really wanted to focus on, as a lot of people didn't know about us. If you ask students, they're like, do we have a student government? I wanted to change that, and we did a ton of outreach, and basically this spring, or like that fall semester, we did a huge outreach campaign. We wanted to collect student feedback. We want to say, what are things that we can improve? And we did a big speakeasy campaign, we called it, where we essentially went up to people and we asked them like, hey, what's something you'd want to improve? And we collected a ton of feedback, and we spent basically this semester and the other ones or this semester and the fall semester and the spring semester, essentially just kind of grinding through all the issues that people have had and sorting out the problems and connecting with people and fixing issues. Besides from that too, we have a ton of new student groups. There's so many events going on, and a lot of the issues that people had is people didn't know what events were going on. There wasn't like, there'd be like one poster here, and we've been really trying to connect with all the student groups and centralize advising for student events. So what we did? Essentially, we did our speakeasy campaign and we collected a ton of feedback, tons of tabling events, and essentially just asking students, what do you like about NMC? What could be improved? And from that feedback, we did a few different things. Facilities, there was a lot of issues with facilities, or not a lot, but a handful of issues with facilities, with lights being out, and just like small little things here and there, like bike pumps, bike racks, just little tiny things that people have, but those little things really add up, and we kind of helped polish up campus a little bit. Another thing too, going back to utilities for like single mothers, is in Scholars Hall, there was no changing booths for a single mom that had a kid there, and she had to walk like 5 minutes across campus over to, I think it was like Osterlin was the nearest one, to go use the changing room. So we helped get changing rooms in the Scholars Hall, as well as Beta Route.
Yes, MK and myself, one of the biggest things that we have been able to do this year is we got 50% student discounts on Beta lines 5 and 14. 5 goes out to Lafrenia, available for student housing. 14 goes out to Acme, which is huge for park and ride students that are coming from Petoskey, Kalkaska, or further.
Beta is like huge thank you to them, because they're willing to work with us and to work with us. Pretty soon here, if these routes continue to, make sense in the financial route, there's a plan to come to you guys, and see if we can streamline this into school fees or something, so that more students can have that available to them.
As a commuter campus, it's really important, and just making people aware that we have these busing routes here, so big thing. Student outreach, thanks.
Yeah, working towards our goal of reaching out more with the students. Something I've been taking on as PR and marketing is doing a rebrand for SGA. I redid our logo, and in the process have also been working on getting an Instagram up and started to kind of give students an easier access to their student government. A lot of what I've been hearing from peers is that they're like, oh, we have a student government, well, how do I talk to the student government to actually get those issues addressed? And from personal experience, a lot of students are on Instagram. That's where they get a lot of their information from, unless it's from their actual faculty. So having a way for them to contact us via the Instagram and also rebranding it so that they want to contact us has been what I've been working on personally. Also getting out more flyers that they're seeing around campus that they also know they can go to our website and have multiple opportunities to get in contact with SGA about their concerns.
Cool, thank you. And so that was basically there's 2 parts of SGA. That was the first part of just kind of what we do for like the administration and like connecting with students. Main part is funding. So we are in charge, you guys are, I don't know if you guys know this, but we are in charge of funding for student groups. They come to us with proposals. We have 8 new groups that formed this year, but basically we give them an allowance of $100 each, and then they can come to us with proposals for potentially more money. And here's kind of a rough breakdown, or like main 3 reasons student groups will come to us are, first off, for like social events. If the student has, for example, we had a Crit Happens is throwing a large spring semester like get-together / party, and they wanted funding for a dice raffle and pizzas and just random stuff like that. And that basically is about 30% of our request. The other part of our request is professional networking experiences. 2 examples I want to give with this one is the Clay Club and aviation. These are 2 things where it's very important that you have networking in the communities, and going to the actual events where you can get connected in the industry is incredibly important. In SGA, they came to us with proposals for funding for this. They were well laid out, well balanced, and we helped fund their trips. Specifically, Clay Club, Women in Aviation, Pi Theta Kappa, one of our students won an award with that, and they needed help with funding for that. The last one is usually equipment and experiences. Photography club, they wanted they needed a new 4x3. They wanted a 4x3 camera, which is essentially I don't know if you guys know about this, but like it's an old style camera where you can do group photography. Most photography is very single. 4x3 is you have the entire group there. You can all look at the shot before you do it, and it's a unique experience for everything I learned. That's basically a breakdown of where we spent our funding. Yeah, thank you for your time. Do you guys have any questions?
Nice job. Wonderful to hear all of the things that you're doing around campus and to improve communication and awareness of what you're doing among the students and the wonderful activities that you are sponsoring too. So I have questions, but I'm going to open it up to the other trustees first to see who would like to ask a question of the group.
I have a
Laura?
question and a comment. Question I think is fairly simple. For years, when I've had the opportunity to hear presentations from SGA, the membership is low. What difference does higher membership make? And yeah,
Oh my God, we can do so much more.
like what?
We'll be able to divide our resources a lot better in order to tackle more issues, for example.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of more division of labor, specifically when we did our speakeasy campaign. I was doing the PR for it. I designed posters. I was putting up posters. I was collecting all the student feedback. I was analyzing the feedback, as well as a few other people. But it was a lot bigger role. We're much more divided with our work. Jace is doing an amazing job with PR. Sebastian and MK, they were handling the whole beta route. We're basically just subdividing this out a little bit.
Right. So with more members, you certainly can cover more ground, get more done to enhance the campus and the college experience. One thing that I will say on my comment side is that the folks that I had the opportunity to talk with at my table is that it sounds like without SGA, we wouldn't know about some of the things that you're enhancing. It's very hard for leadership to get into the levels that you get into, and what you're enhancing is absolutely enhancing the experience by our students. So is there anything that's in the way of getting membership that we might have control over?
Not in the way of getting membership. It's mostly just getting the word out there, tabling and going to events. And thank you for your point. Like it's seriously the small 1% things, and they add up and they make a great campus.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Yes, yes.
As for recruitment though, it's with a large team like this, we're able to do a lot more tabling and get the word out. And honestly, word of mouth is usually the best way. So having more mouths makes a difference.
Great job tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
Kennard?
What you're doing, I think, is very important because there's a high correlation between the students having a sense of belonging and staying here to finish their degree. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I went here twice, 10 years ago, and now, before I had no community, now I have friends everywhere, and it makes all the difference. So thank you. Any other questions?
My question would be, how has your involvement in SGA positioned you now for success in your professional career?
Boy, Exactly, I'm glad you asked that. The ability to go out and try new things. When I first came back to campus, I'm like, I want to get connected. And it was a poster on the front of the Innovation Center. It just said, come join SGA. And I'm like, all right, why not? I am fearless to go talk to anybody now. And that to me is a skill that, like, a leadership skill that I'm going to take away forever. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, I've got a question. It's Sebastian
Yeah.
and MK. Tell me a little bit about the busing situation. You had mentioned something that perked my ears, and it's fantastic work, by the way. Tell me a little bit about those folks who are coming in from, you mentioned Petoskey or Kalkaska. Tell me, how does that work? Are they bringing and doing parking a car and then catching a bus? Are they getting dropped off nearby? How does that process work to bring those students in who are coming from far away?
Yeah, so a lot of students, specifically those coming out like from Kalkaska or even Northport on the opposite side of the bay, a lot of them, either they will drive the full way from their house into NMC, sometimes even stretching an hour and a half long rides, especially in bad weather. So the park and ride is something Beta has done for a few years now. Basically, at the bus stops, there's parking lots, so you can time your journey. So by the time you arrive at the bus stop, you can just park your car, hop on a bus, and Beta will take care of the rest of the way for you. And so by adding student discounts to those, it makes it so much more affordable for students. I believe for line 14, the one going out to Acme, that took the trip price down from around $7 to, I believe, $3.50. Yeah, don't quote me on the exact numbers for that, but it's around there.
Fantastic. That is so important. And I would love to learn more about that and see what we can do to support that idea and expand it if possible. I think that is amazing to be able to help, especially with, we had a winter. I don't know if anybody noticed. We had a winter this year. And that ability to get people to campus and make it easier is so important, because we know when students are on campus, their likelihood to be more successful and to stick around. So.
To your point, I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention Marcus, because we did a lot of work with Marcus also because obviously we have a lot of students coming from other states that driving in the winter is not something they're used to, and obviously they live in the domes and they need to go to Meyer, and so a beta bus would be something that would be really useful for those people as well.
To that point, I will mention the biggest challenge that we have faced with this is it's a chicken and the egg situation. Beta is limited on what they can do without ridership and data, but you can't get that ridership and data without the availability and the expansion. And Beta is limited on that given their budget and their staffing limits. And so right now we've kind of entered a little bit of a waiting period as we can gather more data, hopefully expand line 5 to go from, instead of terminating at Denhouse, terminate at the Innovation Center or North Hall, like Beta used to go.
Well, fantastic. It's very impressive what you have accomplished so far this year. We appreciate you taking the time to put together this presentation for us, and we look forward to seeing all of the good work that you've done around the campus and the community on behalf of the students at NMC. We are better off having you all engaged in this way, and so thank you very much.
Thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Next, we are going to have our faculty report from Melissa Sprenkel, communications instructor. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can.
Okay. So I have a few slides. I'm just going to go through some of the context of why I'm talking to you about Gen AI. I want to highlight before I talk about my work on this and in instruction at NMC that I'm part of a group of faculty. We're all in a lot of ways working on the problem of instruction and Gen AI and how generative AI is going to affect instruction and learning. And so the assignment I'm going to go over, there are other assignments we could look at. So anyway, I'm just going to get started. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit about my context in talking about this issue and setting up an assignment based on it. I mean, I'm a writing teacher, and in my work as a writing teacher in 2023, when ChatGPT suddenly became really popular with students, I had some pretty students that I know from in-class writing, and I know kind of what their voice was like, were giving me really strange texts. And so in my process of trying to learn where this was coming from and them trying to explain it to me, and then the news kind of telling me what's going on, and then me testing this tool, I thought, how could this be dropped on us without any like discussion, analysis tools or research on how it's going to affect higher education, how it's going to affect student learning? Because when I searched our databases at NMC, at that time, I couldn't find articles on research, like even in my field. It was like an upcoming, like, so anyway, we can go into theories about that. That's not what this is about. But here I am facing this context where suddenly everybody's talking about ChatGPT, and I want to talk about how to teach writing and critical thinking. And what I'm getting is replacement of writing and critical thinking. So I applied in 2023, that hit, and in 2024, January, I applied for sabbatical at NMC to go to conferences, to get access to bigger libraries that might have like more recent high-level research in language education, you know, in fields. We do tap into that in our libraries, but we didn't have as broad of access. And at that point, the stuff just wasn't, because in scholarship, it takes longer for things to get out there, for the research to get done. So I applied for that and was given that grant to just use the semester to do my professional development, see what I could find out, and to use it to kind of incorporate lessons and to do research for how we should set up policy and so on. So I'm very grateful for that. And I started off by going to the Modern Language Association annual conference, the National English Teacher Conference. They had a task force on Gen AI and writing instruction. It was the MLA task force on this. And they were offering feedback from scholars across the nation about how to make policy. There were deans there. There were people at all levels of administration. And so I got to hear what they were saying. And they were also people that instructed in my field of composition in English. And so I got some ideas from that, not only about how to teach things, but how to make policy. While I'm in my own learning process, even though this was my research personal sabbatical, part of the work that I did was on campus, as some of the people here can say. I worked with our Gen AI working group to begin working on our own policies and to share and accept research. I had many conversations with our research librarian. We did a lot of collaboration for setting up many types of assignments. And we got into cross-campus conversations. Can you guys hear me? I can't really tell. Okay. Okay, so, and then I also was in the work of developing a pilot set of Gen AI literacy assignments that I was gonna test in my English 112 class in the fall when I got back in spring, in fall 25. So that's what the context is that I'm in that process of my own learning, and I set up a pilot of a sequence of assignments. And so I paired it up with this online course that I was teaching. Online presents a particular problem with Gen AI because I don't see the students. I don't, how am I gonna teach writing? I could talk with you another day about how I did that. There's a lot of details that went into that. And obviously there's much to work out. But what I decided to do is English 112 is the second semester of writing, research writing, academic writing that transfers to almost all the colleges and universities. And so it has, at its domain, it's teaching college writing, but it's a very particular type of college writing. It's not like me writing whatever I want to write, but me entering a conversation among other people who are researching a similar problem. What is the key situation for them? What research has been done? How can we add to that conversation? That's a whole like cognitive process that we're trying to teach and model in English 112. Of course, they learn more about sources and citations and setting up academic arguments. But the way I teach English 112 is to have those conversations effectively together and collaborate, we need a shared topic of inquiry. So for me, that semester and this semester in my current English 112 classes, that shared research topic is generative AI. So, and its effects either in professional fields or in learning. And so that course now begins with, we read some things together because not everybody knows everything about Gen AI. Some of them might think they do, or they don't. So we explore what do experts, I have some articles from Scientific American where they talk about different functions of Gen AI, how it's put together, how it works, and also some issues. So we do that. I also have them test Gen AI, in that I have them see, one thing I'm supposed to teach them is how to read, academically, or to enhance those reading skills. So I have them like test what are Gen AI's reading skills like, because that's a common thing where you have it summarized. And we use Gemini because that is our Gen AI that has all of as much privacy and education FERPA guidance that you can have. We don't have that kind of contract with ChatGPT, so we talk about that. And then I give them prompts for like, get an article that you find, that you've read, that's about something that you know, and then you set up this test. We all use the same prompts so that we create database together, and we can see what are the results. What does Gen AI do with articles that we have read? How does it read versus how we read? Okay, so anyway, I think I'm doing more of the context than I've already talked about the opportunity for co-learning because, am I done already?
You can take a moment to wrap up if you'd like.
Okay. So I set that up, and then what the slides are, which is, I think I've gone over some of the goals. This is the final reflection prompt. You can look at this later, where I have them at the end of the semester, given all the stuff we've researched and the stuff that they've been writing. I have them think, like, what are key things that they think Gen AI is doing in support of student learning of writing, and what are some barriers they think it might create. And so what I've given you is not like everything they wrote for me, these in final, but some summative statements that they gave me that kind of highlight the themes. So here are some benefits. So one student says, after I free write a section, I ask a model, the model to label each paragraph's function, and it tells me how to think about my own writing. So this is a function that I can use it to learn. Students can use AI to gather background knowledge quickly, explore unfamiliar concepts. So if I don't know something, it's going to have access to more data theoretically, and it can pull up more information. Over time, this can make it harder for students, this is potential drawbacks. I think I skipped ahead. Over time, this can make it harder for students to build confidence in their thinking skills because they get used to choosing Gen AI-generated suggestions rather than working through the challenges themselves. So there's a way in which they have to kind of work at that and negotiate that. It can be too easy, and then they don't know what they don't know. And then another discussion about how it can circuit their own like reading and note-taking process because it offers these notes. And it also offers false, broken citations, false information. And in the next one, you'll see one article that they read was called ChatGPT Isn't Hallucinating, It's Just Bullshitty, which I had a student in this semester who was like, she just likes saying shit in class. So she's like, we get to use that word. Anyway, I don't know. Hopefully she's not, anyway, never mind, we won't go into that. But this is just trying to get them to think about this thing about Gen AI, that it's not just randomly hallucinating something out of thin air, it's doing an ish. It's taking whatever is out there and coming up with something similar. And so we learned a lot about how it actually works and what it can do for us and what it doesn't do. And what it doesn't do is, which I will say to wrap it all up, they discover that and then they have to work with the problem. It doesn't really read. it predicts. It's a very complex prediction machine, and it doesn't think, and it can never judge. It can't make a judgment. It just responds to your prompts and gives you back things that are similar that could be useful to you based on the big database. But it's making a guess based on things that you say or your input of your prompt. Anyway, I could go on to more, but that was my conclusion and takeaway. The students are learning with us. It's just one Gen AI literacy project.
Thank you, Dr. Sprinkle. What an absolutely fascinating topic, and something that is going to be top of mind for everyone in education here at NMC for years to come. I am going to start off with a question, if that's okay. Well, first of all, 2024, I think, is when you started to look at this. Is that right?
2024 is when I got permission
For the sabbatical?
for the sabbatical.
So that is a lifetime ago in AI.
Exactly.
And so could you speak to a little bit about your journey on this, and how could you possibly wrangle this tiger as far as the pace of change in an organization, in education where, it's a big organization, sometimes a little rudder. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. I could talk for days about it, but personally, I can't personally do that. So, you know what I mean? Because there's so many threads that we've got going. I've got like a key set of like conclusions that I have come to about that are true across the board, like almost like, I'm not comparing myself to Einstein, but like his idea that there are laws out there. And like generative AI, there are other types of AI, but generative AI is only a very complex prediction technique. It has access to multiple massive layers of data, so that makes it do something that it's hard for me as an individual to do, but it also can't do my interpreting. It can't replace the human. And it's got all of whatever's happening with our database, such as biases, fact issues, it's not going to resolve those for us, and it might entrench them, because whatever's on the internet is going to be overemphasized, just like with algorithms. And then you can set up parameters. You can do RAG, what RAGs, RAGs, authentication. You can set up systems, closed systems, where you set up a Gen AI so I have gotten into the technology, but where you set up a Gen AI to work only with the documents you feed it. And those are the most authoritative outputs. If I were going to use Gen AI for my own content, like in teaching or in an effective domain, like, a FAQ on our campus, you want to RAG, you don't want to have generalized. And even then, it will still be too general sometimes and still make up things. So I don't know why it makes up things, and at least from last report, the people at Anthropic and so on can't, at least they're saying they don't know. They're learning more about. There's a black box there, but now I sound like I'm doing magic rather than science. Maybe the scientists know more than me. But in all my reading, I haven't seen a full explanation. But I have heard the tech people talk about how the problem is that if it makes a mistake, you can't go back through and see where that mistake happened in its analysis. You can't go back, so you can't correct it that way. You have to correct the output only. You don't know why it's generating false output. Is that wrong, or do you guys know more than I do? I'm not the scientist, I'm the English teacher, man.
Kennard.
Yeah, my career was as a lawyer, and when I had to do an initial public offering or a large merger, what I would do is often pull an all-nighter.
Yeah.
And my brain was concentrating on this one transaction, and I was creating the architecture of the document. When you go to generative AI, it creates the architecture. How do you help students remain in charge instead of letting the machine take over for them?
I don't have all the answers to that. All I can say is in my context is that we paid attention to what it does. Do you see what I'm saying? We said, okay, what kind of thing does it generate? What do those structures offer, and where are they missing? From my class perspective, I can always tell when they're not doing their own reading, because it's not going to be specific about examples. It's going to only pick when you ask it to pick a quotation, which is one thing we had it do in our test that we did of Gemini. We said pick a key quotation. It picked a very random or generic quotation, and sometimes it got the quotation wrong. And so I get them to pay attention, because as a teacher, I don't have to like inoculate them from this, you know what I mean? And I don't have an institution that I have to inoculate from that kind of mistake. But all I can do is offer them tools and reasons for managing their learning process. And that is, sometimes if you show them what it can and can't do, if it's visible to them, they know what they want their stuff to look like. And so if they want their stuff to look good, at the conference, a professor from Howard University who was leading one of the discussions said, the thing is, if people want to learn critical thinking, writing teachers, we got game. We can teach them how to do critical thinking. If they don't want to do the critical thinking, then I can try to set up ways to convince them otherwise, but I can't like inoculate them from that. Not that you were saying that. In law, I don't know, you probably know all of the articles in law about how there have been big mistakes made by people who use Gen AI to generate some of their briefs, I guess it was. It's been a while since I've read about that. I don't know. Are there regulations in law now for when you can use that, Gen AI? Okay, not to put you on the spot.
I'm struggling with it myself. That's why I'm asking you.
I have a student who, in one of his research projects to this semester that he's working on, is looking at the problem of lack of regulation of Gen AI and its uses. And he's looking through materials. Of course, as a first-year student, he's not going to be able to process it all, but he's asking the question. And what we're seeing is that there isn't regulation for what it's doing. I don't know what to do about that. I'm sorry.
Yes, Ken?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and for what you're doing and will be doing in this area. Our next session is going to be focused on our strategic plan and specifically on future-focused education. And I think that how we deal with AI in terms of preparing our students for the world of the future is the single most important educational challenge confronting not only NMC, but every educational institution probably in the world. And I'm curious to hear about, and I know there may not be time now to go into this, maybe it's another session, but I'd love to hear how the faculty are getting together to try to build on each other's ideas of both teaching methods and specific skills. Okay, well, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, we started in October PD, but actually we didn't start, but that's one place where the October PD, where we had the whole conference was on dealing with it. And some of our disciplines need to deal with it more than others. I'm not the only person on these committees, but continue to be on the working group for strategic planning, and I'm working with Terry and her group, looking at like how that element of our forward-thinking education element, how does not just AI, but other tech too, how are we making sure students have whatever we can give them, the tools that we can give them to both like learn about the new things, what it can and can't do, but also to shore up their individual learning still. Like, how do we do that? And we're trading. I'm in a current cohort now where we're reviewing online courses together. I'm in a faculty group, and one of the things we're talking about is, what works if you want to do test taking and so on, and how do we deal with Gen AI? What are the different things? So, I mean, I could go on and on about that, but it's not a solvable problem, but I think we're all working on it.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Smith. We appreciate this information, and nice job. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening.
And with that, we're going to move on to the strategic plan, Anchor and Edge, future-focused education with Jason, Stephen, and Terry. Please come on up. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having us today. Stephen and Terry will be joining me as they're leading part of our Strategy 1 efforts around future-focused education. One of the things that we're trying to do, and you probably caught bits and pieces of it tonight, but it'll become more coherent as we go through this process, is we're trying to connect better the various presentations, student groups, faculty outreach, et cetera, that you hear each night. So today, I wanted to kind of draw a line to what you heard back to the strategic plan. So for instance, when Hannah was up here and she was speaking about some of that college edge work that we were able to see with that single mom and the 3.75 GPA, and then having to work through her own challenges, obviously both in the classroom and outside, that college edge program is what we're looking at in terms of our objective 4 in this strategy as we look to address student success and make students more successful here at the college. So that was one piece. And then you saw SGA who was up here, and they were talking about some of the work they were doing as they were trying to bring a better sense of belonging to campus. And so we actually leveraged SGA in the fall, and then we're going to do it again in our strategy 3 as we look at what are those top priorities that they're addressing. How does it line up with the work that we're doing and making sure that we're working on those things together, because retention is important. And so again, tying those two back to the strategic plan. Then obviously you heard Melissa Sprinkle speak earlier as she was talking about AI and digital literacy. And so what you're seeing is the work that she's doing, the work that Terry and Stephen and others are doing as she leads some of that committee on the AI work. And then how do we bring that to our other faculty members, our other programs, our other instructors? And so again, can we leverage PD Day? Can we leverage some of these small group? Can we leverage the strat plan to bring that out? Because Ken, as you said, that's probably one of our most critical elements that we have moving forward is how do we address the need for digital literacy across all our programs, as well as AI efficiency with our staff as well. And so one of the pieces that you hopefully will see as we move through the strategic plan this time is that connection between those various programs. And I thought today was a great example of seeing what looked like 3 different or unique activities all come back under this strategic plan, and 2 of those 3 being within this strategy. So in your packet, you were able to see our strategic plan focus for strategy 1. In that, I can pull it up. I need a generative AI up here with me to, work through the slides real quick. So a couple of things I wanted to do is on the front, again, reset the board around our strategic plan so that you could see those 3 strategies that we're addressing: our future-focused education, our enrollment and student success, and then our campus vibrancy. And then today what I want to focus in on is our strategy 1. And then what we'll do is throughout the year, we'll come back around the other 2 strategies as well as the strategic drivers. Because while the first 3 sessions with the board probably will feel a little bit like the last NMC Next plan, our goal as we move through this strategic plan is to allow you to see different parts and leverage these strategic drivers, leverage some of the work that we're doing across campus, and give the board a little bit different feel for where we are with the strategic plan. And then hitting certain milestones throughout the year, we'll go back and dig deeper into each set of metrics. And so today we'll focus on strategy 1. Next month we'll dive into strategy 2, and then 3 in May. And then we'll jump around through the various partnerships and other strategic drivers that we have, and then we'll work our way back to the strategies. But today when we look at this, again, we're jumping into our 4 objectives. I'll give you a high-level overview and give you ample time to ask us questions on there. But the goal today was to give you our objectives, which you've seen before and you approved in December, but then give you kind of a reset, like what does success look like? So when we look at our AI initiative on there, how do our students walking out of our occupational areas meet the needs of employers in the region? How do our students that are transferring on to another institution of higher education meet their digital literacy or their AI proficiency requirements? And then how are our faculty and staff getting the training that they need to bring this to their classrooms? How are we able to deploy the learning that Melissa has? And then eventually, how do we leverage our AI not only for our students' needs, but also for our faculty and staff interactions? And so what we're looking at, if that is what our goal is coming 3 years out of this plan, how do we align that work? And so we know that we'll have a lot of various actions and tasks that we'll be doing. But what we're trying to do is at a very high level, when we walk out of this plan, be able to say, what does industry expect from our students in terms of artificial intelligence readiness? And are our students prepared? And so we're working with our advisory boards, our business partners, our institutional research, our ORPE group, to identify what are those AI expectations for each area, and then how are we doing? So for instance, when we work with our business advisory board, as they have basically a cross-pollination of everything from marketing to traditional business to accounting, what are those AI needs that students, what AI needs do they have in industry? And then how can our students be better prepared? And then we want to do that same thing with our transfer institutions. That's our high-level goal. That would kind of address, Ken, what you're getting at is, how do we make sure that our students are prepared for this world that's changing out there? We don't have that data yet, but what we're doing in this preliminary action steps is grabbing that data. We have advisory boards meeting right now in the springtime, pulling that data, looking at national benchmarks, and then we'll be able to roll that out as we move into our summertime frame. We also know that we have secondary indicators. You know, we're gonna look at some of the use of AI across departments and kind of norm that across areas. Who's using it, how they're using it, how can we align that better? And then obviously increase some of those professional training and other activities that we have ongoing. All that will feed back into that overarching metrics for those objectives. And then for each objective, we tried to show, you know, where are we starting at right now? What are we top level? What are those actions that we're gonna be driving into? Or diving into. So you can see we're looking at that framework for some of our AI. We're looking at employer engagement. We're doing more as we try to enhance AI and technological learning for our faculty and staff. And then we'll do that across a number of our other objectives as well. So we have 4 total objectives, 3 more. So within this one, we want to make sure that we're going to expand our experiential learning and work-based activities. And so this is our initiative related to our durable skills. So as we look at this, how many of our students are getting that next endorsement? So if you recall, and you heard SGA talk about wanting to increase membership, Laura, you brought that up. One of the things that we did in the last plan was we brought experiential learning to all credential-seeking students. And then by the end of it, we had morphed it into a full-fledged endorsement that students could receive called the NMC Next. Part of that is if you attend a student group, you get points towards that endorsement. If you're a leader in that student group, you get even more points on there. And so again, the goal is to use some of these strategies from the previous plan along with these to grow that out so that we do see more people in SGA. Then we looked at it, we're gonna also judge the number of students that are seeking that credential. And then we're gonna do some alignment. If we're saying that these durable skills are so important to employers and are so important for the ability for a student to be successful, how are we making sure those line up with the needs of our industry partners? We've already received very positive feedback from those. Some people call them soft skills, professional skills, but we do know they are starting to resonate with industry. And then the same thing, we want to look at that other half of our pie, those students that are going on to our transfer institutions. And then again, making sure that our courses have those alignments on there. And we're going to do the same with our objective 3. Again, this was our distinctive program or more distinguished programs. And so these are the programs that reach outside of Northwest Michigan. This takes a lot of the feedback we received from the board in the last strategic plan and continues to elevate that. So for this objective, we're looking at obviously the financial performance of those program areas. They're critical for us, whether it's drones or Great Lakes Water Studies Institute, maritime, aviation, nursing, and more. But then we're also looking at their enrollment targets and then how are they being perceived? If we're holding these up as programs that extend outside of Northwest Michigan, what's the market perception? What's the visibility? What are those strategic partnerships that they have formed that allow them to move deeper into their industry or deeper into those connections? So we're taking the last plan and really diving in deeper. This will have some of the marketing strategies and others related to those. And then finally, this is the work that Hannah and her team and Stephen and others have been working on. Joy was leading our HLC group as well. As we look at those students that are most at risk in our courses with either high failure, withdrawal, or dropping rates. And so we want to take those students that are most at risk and provide support early in the process. So they could be college edge type programs. These could be more of those student success coaches. We want to make sure that we're identifying those students early and giving them the support before they even enter the classroom in some sort of summer type format. And then once they're in our classrooms, how do we make sure they're successful? And so this was again the HLC process that we've already jumped into as we're looking at some of the course completion rates, but then also enrollee success rates. Who are those that are most successful in those courses? And looking to expand those for our courses that have the highest level of DFW rates. So again, this will ultimately help the college not only from a student success standpoint, but also from a retention standpoint. And that was work that was started, again, through our HLC process, and then now is being accelerated because of the strategic plan. So each one of those has the beginning of the metrics. Some of them are in place, as we can see on this one, and some we're currently gathering. And then we'll continue to report those out through our yearly process as we navigate around all 3 strategies and all 4 strategic drivers.
Thank you, Jason. I want to ask a question related to AI, and we're talking about having students being prepared, working with employers to make sure that we're aligning the skill set, the things that we're transferring over knowledge with AI for the students going out into the workforce. But you mentioned something key for me too, which was the shaping of curriculum changes moving forward, where we have to be able to make sure that we are, teaching relevant things to these students with the pace of change in AI. That has to be really challenging to be able to identify some of those things, perhaps that AI are going to make, automated into the future. So can you talk a little bit about how do you gauge that? How do we stay involved and engaged in something that's so challenging?
So as Jason has mentioned, it begins with conversations with the advisory committee members. These are members of our community, industry leaders, and they are the ones that really we are looking to give us the sense of what is the AI that they want to see in our graduates and their employees, as well as what are the durable skills. And so Joy, with the Office of Research Effectiveness, we will be surveying both the employers on AI as well as our durable skills so that they give us firsthand information. I can assure you, after attending all of the advisory committee meetings, one of the first questions I always ask the entire board is, what are the AI skills that you want to see in your employees? And as Kennard mentioned, they are grappling with it just as we are grappling with it. They want to have those skills, but they're not exactly sure which skills they want. They certainly are in full agreement with the college, and that is we must use AI responsibly. And so when I attend meetings with our industry partners, they come back and say, we want to have those skills, but we want you to teach the students so they use it responsibly. So, for instance, that our intellectual property doesn't walk out the door by using some kind of AI method. And so this is a process that we're all working through, and it's happening at the national level. I just came back from the League of Innovation conference in Indianapolis, and more than 30% of the sessions were on artificial intelligence, as you might guess. And all the schools and all the industry partners that participated in those presentations are grappling with this issue. And just as we see here, there are those early adopters that are out the door urging it, and then there are those that are more skeptical about what the impact's going to be on our students and their future employees. So I think, as Melissa shared with you earlier, we're working through this. Terry is, along with Ryan Bernstein, heading that first objective on artificial intelligence. And one of the first things that we needed to do was to establish a college policy. We did that. What we just did a soft launch today. We have our own college website for artificial intelligence today that is bringing together all of the resources that we have, as well as the guidance that we're going to be offering our faculty and staff as we go forward with this.
Yes, Laura.
A non-AI question. You've mentioned a few times this evening our advisory boards, advisory committees. Can you give me a refresher on the industries that represent our advisory boards?
Every occupational program that the college has is required by the state to have an advisory board. So So Health Occupations is an advisory board for dental assisting, surgical technology, and
Okay,
nursing.
manufacturing, construction.
Construction has its own, welding, the electrical.
How do we bring in an advisory board that isn't necessarily connected to a curriculum specialization that's required? For instance, our general business community, the tech industry, an advisory board for those employers that are employing people out of our school that aren't necessarily directly connected to manufacturing, construction, health, a curriculum. Am I making sense?
Yes, our business programs have advisory.
They
boards.
have an advisory board, okay. Then you seem to have it, oh, okay. And so it's driven by law, by the curriculum that we have.
And we are always looking for more advisory members. And that work is done through the program coordinators, some who are staff and some who are faculty. I can, just as an example, Scott Goethals, who is our business chair, is also the program coordinator for our computer information technology program. And he is regularly going out to industry, recruiting more advisory members, because we want the boards to be as inclusive as possible, because we care about where our students are ultimately going to find employment.
Correct. And the reason for the question is because the role of an advisory board is so critical to what we're bringing in, as you all well know. The foundation board, this board could be very helpful to leads on who could sit on those boards to make sure that we're getting fresh input, relevant, and of course it's always relevant, but just new ideas on what's needed out in the different industries.
We would welcome any recommendations from the board as far as
Go ahead.
individual.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Kennedy, go ahead.
Following up on Laura's question, how is someone who's not on an advisory board, maybe a newly developing industry or somebody who's just not there but has a new idea or a question or a need for instructions for employees, how would they get through to somebody at the college who could answer it or do something about it?
I would suggest that they contact me right away, because I will be more than happy to direct them to one of our advisory boards.
Do we make that known so people would know to do that?
Yes. So I probably averaged 3 to 4 outreach, either meetings or follow-ups a week. So right now I meet with a new member that got connected to the college through the Community Foundation, Forefront Credit Union the end of last week, and then I presented to Traverse Connect's Economic Forum, which was a diverse group of industry partners and chamber members, and I actually told them that we'd be soliciting them for this input as well. And then I think we're fortunate right now with the work that EASE is doing with the NOMI Attainment Collaborative, that we have representatives out across industry. We're down in Benzie County, we're down in Wexford County, and a couple other areas in the coming weeks where we're trying to make that front door broader. So I feel like we're doing a really good job, whether they reach out through the academic side to Stephen or through me or through the extended ed, of trying to get them into the right spot. So for instance, we even had a company today that reached out that's designing a new bicycle helmet, and why we weren't the right place for it, we're able to, now we have them in our database. There's somebody that could look at, as an entrepreneur student could reach out to them, and then we found them some supports in town.
Jason, if I can add to both your questions, Laura and Kenner, the numbers as of this semester, and Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, the advisory boards constitute 250 companies. So there are 250 companies within our region who serve on our advisory boards. And those 250 companies, there's 437 individuals. So we have 437 business people from 250 companies from throughout the region who funnel into our advisory boards.
Outstanding. That's just great to know. In all my roles here, I've never known that those numbers and the caliber of that. It's really, really important. Well done.
Ken?
Yeah, first of all, my congratulations to the three of you and everybody else involved in what I think is a very thoughtful and almost provocative approach to the strategic plan this time. I'm very enthusiastic about what you have there. This may be a little bit specific, but what are the 9 durable skills?
Yes.
I mean, this may actually be getting at the question that I was asking earlier, is what is it we need to be teaching to our students to prepare them for the future in general?
Yes, I just sent the list actually to a gentleman that asked for it, related to the durable skills. We're looking at, I was trying to get on my phone, but I wasn't fast enough. So it's professional communication, it's problem solving, it's critical thinking, and then it works its way down through, that was, the top 3, and then it works its way to 9 total on there. I can give you that full list, and if I was faster, I could pop it up, but
I'd love to see it.
I think teamwork, adaptability, and
Thank you.
emotional intelligence are the last 3.
Yeah. Perfect.
Pam?
Related to that, you did mention, Jason, that students who are involved with student government can apply what they've learned to a next certificate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Because that I was really pleased to hear that, because I had to look up the durable skills too. We used to call them soft skills. Durable sounds much better. So I looked them up over the weekend when I was going through the board packet. But I can tell you within 5 minutes of sitting at the table with Ava, she talked about at least 6 of those skills that she has learned in the last 9 months. Incredible. So I guess I would encourage you maybe even to sneak in a word when you're talking about, integrate the 9 durable skills into curriculum programming. Todd won't want to hear me say this, but I'm going to say, and co-curricular programming. I would throw co-curricular in there as well. And the fact that you've got the certificate means, no, you don't have to develop a co-curricular transcript. I know the challenges, if not horrors, that can go along with that. So you've already got the certificate. But somehow then work with the students and maybe involve faculty in this, and as well as student affairs staff, to say, here is a way that you can learn all kinds of things that are going to help, that we can document through the certificate and help you in employability, et cetera. Because sometimes students have a hard time. They know they're learning stuff, but transferring that into resume fodder and figuring out how they can articulate that with employers, with potential transfer institutions, et cetera. So I just throw co-curricular in there because clearly they're learning there too.
Great. Can I have them here? It's creative problem solving, collaboration, critical thinking, empathy, resilience, initiative, intercultural fluency, oral communication, and self-directed learning.
Yeah. It happens outside the classroom as well as in.
Yes, and I think you're right. And I think the way we design that endorsement, it feeds into exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Thank you, Pam. Jody?
So I'm happy to hear my trustees asking more about the advisory boards, particularly because the metrics that are established for that, that is one of the key drivers or focuses for the board and the college when it comes to AI. So my questions coming into the meeting were like, well, who is conducting the surveys? What is the expected load on those individuals? And because it could become a more subjective metric, whether we have 2 people participating in the pilot groups versus 250 if we only get half of the 437 individuals to respond. But we've heard from Melissa, and just as we've talked about these 9 durable skills, so this is more of a comment/question, is how are we making sure that we're not only preparing the students to use AI in the workforce and have the skills necessary to manipulate AI, but those 9, like what guardrails are we building into our curriculums, or how are we working with the departments and the professors to make sure that they're developing the skills and not replacing them?
So what we are, part of the surveying that we're going to do for the advisory committees is to identify what are the 2 or 3 priority durable skills that each program's advisory board want to do. And those are the then 2 or 3 that will be emphasized through the curriculum for each of the programs. So it's not really, the intention is not that every program is going to teach the non-durable skills. We're really looking to the employers to tell us what are the 2 or 3 that are their top priorities, and those are the ones that will then be integrated more fully into the curriculum.
And then how do we test to ensure that those have actually been achieved and they're not, as we're focusing on AI, we're embedding the use of AI, we're training the students, that we have the guardrails in place that they're actually like learning those skills, and so that I don't know with the data that we obtain from the employers that after they're hired, right, we believe that we have given them the top 3 skills that the employers have identified, that they're not hired and then fired 6 months later because they do not actually have those skills. They've used AI throughout their coursework to lead us to believe as an institution that they gained them while they were here.
And I think as you heard from Melissa, and what we are all grappling with is how to figure that out. But our own evaluations of the feedback we receive from advisory board members ask them, are we meeting your outcomes? So if despite our efforts, the students somehow circumvent our best efforts and they use AI irresponsibly and then cannot prove themselves in the workplace, we're going to find out very quickly from the employers that something is amiss.
Okay, we just have one more quicker question. Sure. Okay, so this one just happens to be up. And so it seems like quite an aggressive goal to increase increase the course completion rate by over 10% of where we stand currently. So what gives us confidence in our ability to obtain 91%? Is it because we're looking to peers, or that there are others that have implemented strategies that we intend to follow?
I love your question. So here's what we did. So you heard about our work with the HLC, and we were part of the Student Success Academy. So we identified that we were going to focus on courses with high DFW rates that were also gateway courses. We have those 9 courses. The metrics that you see right here are based on those 9 courses. So we wanted to look internally. We wanted to compare those students in those 9 courses to our overall rates. We did that. We also looked externally, and we use the National Community College Benchmark Project, the NCCBP metrics. And so we see how we compare nationally, and we took those 2 pieces into account. We came up with these percentages. We feel very confident because of all the work that Hannah's already been doing with different initiatives, such as college edge programming and other ones that we're working on and getting more involved with. So,
thank you.
Can I add to the answer? Prior to you joining the board and a couple others, this board was very encouraging of the team and Nick to go big on their goals. So I am impressed to see some of these audacious goals, and then the follow-up, joy and the confidence in being able to get to them. So it was a good question, and it came strong over time. Yeah.
Yes, Pam.
Quick question related to the last one here on student success and the DFW rate. Other data that you have on the students who you identify at risk is what courses they took in high school. And I'm thinking the traditional students, but what courses they took in high school and what were their grades and where they went to high school. Is there any feedback loop to the secondary schools that are feeders?
For example,
if one of these courses is college algebra, I'm making that up, but it probably is.
We took a slightly different approach, and we looked at at-risk factors. What we identified, high school GPA is always a predictor. But we actually found a group of students, they were coming out of high school, they had a GPA of less than 2.0, and they were, of course, in college, they're 18 to 21. And so they're also living in the East Hall dorm. And so we actually have a location of where these students are and where we feel like we can target, put a lot of our efforts toward.
Okay. I just wondered if there was ever any feedback back to the high schools, if there was a feedback loop there at all. Okay, just a question.
I think one of the takeaways from this is we continue to have more engagement, especially with TCAPs, and they have interest in some of these initiatives. And this could be a really good opportunity for us to share back what we're seeing, right?
Right.
Here's our gateway course. We don't have to disclose, individual students, but we see a large percentage, obviously, that came from your school with this type of trait, or this, we're seeing maybe we're an outlier percentage, right? A larger percentage comes from this district or that. I do think that's something that we can probably dive into.
Yeah, obviously protecting student privacy, but there could be some synergy there as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting way that we could probably share the data back and not put anybody on the spot too.
Right.
Like, this is our initiative, something we're trying, but we thought we'd share this back with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Pam. And real quick, before we move on, can you talk a little bit about, back up a little bit to the advisory boards, with the unique offerings and exciting things that we're doing that are going to push and draw students from all over the world, to look beyond just our region for those advisors. But can you talk a little bit about that? First of all, I'm going to say, no matter what the industry is in our market, we are fortunate enough to live in an amazing, beautiful place we are a magnet city for talent, regardless of what you look at, whatever profession. So I think that's going to lend well to us having access to these new folks too, that may be able to help bring to the conversation on these advisory boards, especially related to AI. But can you talk a little bit about those programs that we have that have tremendous outreach? How do we make sure that we're staying, informed through the advisory committees by expanding beyond just our region?
So currently, those distinguished programs like aviation, UAS, maritime, they all have members that are well beyond the confines of northern Michigan. And frankly, through remote access, we are able to pull people from throughout the United States through Zoom. And then in terms of maritime, they come here once a year and then once in Cleveland, because it's closer to much where the industry is. They provide that information to us very directly, as we've talked about. So those advisory members for those distinguished programs that are national programs clearly bring in national feedback, and which makes it very valuable for us to do exactly what you're suggesting, Mark.
I have to follow up with this. I was actually going to just send an email about this and not talk about it, but you referred to them as distinguished programs, and that was done twice in here. Nick, in his monthly memo to us, referred to them as distinctive rather than distinguished. And I'm wondering whether the distinguished was intended. I thought that was kind of a typo, because what that's implying is that our other programs are not distinguished. And I would rather see these being considered distinctive. The police academy is a very distinguished program in its own right, for example, but it's not as distinctive as these are. When we think about this and talk about them, I'd be a little careful with that. And I think some of them are distinguished, but I don't want to suggest that the other ones are not, which is the implicit statement.
Yeah, it's not obviously meant to do that. We're trying to work harder with this plan to line up with some of the brand leadership work that we did last year. And it often, when it refers to those programs, whether it's aviation, drones, et cetera, it does classify them as distinguished. But I think, Ken, that's feedback that we can take back as we look to try to line up all the documents, right? And so the language that I'm trying to pull in here aligns closer to like our branding work that we've done. But I think, you know, your comment is accurate in terms of how other programs could view that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And next, we are going to hear from Troy, the fiscal year 27 budget process conversation starter. Hi, Troy.
Hi there. Okay. Lots of presentations today, so thanks for giving me this time slot to give you an update on the fiscal 27 budget. We are 3 months away from the end of this fiscal year and starting anew, which is, again, why I stand before you today. And I would just remind you that these slides are available on the board website, as well as there's a packet of information in the board packet that gets a lot more granular into the budget. So today, I'm going to shed some light on the industry outlook, and then we'll talk about key budget assumptions, the fiscal 27 budget status, and then where we're at in terms of timeline and next steps. All right. So in December of each year, the credit rating agencies all release their outlook on the industry. And, you know, as you can see from the quotes and the excerpts I pulled from those, it's not looking great. But that doesn't mean, you know, NMC is, you know, subject to all of these things, but ultimately it's something that we can't ignore. And we, you know, can't put our head in the sand, and we have to be proactive in addressing these things. When you look at, you know, Fitch calls out declining enrollment, as well as changes to federal loan programs and limits for students. And then, you know, the obstacles for international students, which, you know, again, is not a huge sector of students for NMC, but, you know, those can be, those barriers can have some impact on enrollment. The S&P, you know, they had a negative outlook, citing, you know, lower expectations. They said colleges and universities will struggle to navigate through mounting operating pressures and uncertainty that will require budgetary and programmatic adjustments. So, and Moody's was something very similar. So this doesn't spell doom for NMC, and I'm not standing up here saying that, but again, these are the realities that we're dealing with in the environment. Further, when you look at this demographic cliff, if you haven't, I guess, heard of this terminology, there's an expectation based on the birth rates in Michigan that we are going to have 20% less high school graduates in 2041 compared to where we were at a couple years ago. So that's just a reality that we've known and communicated to the board, but ultimately, we have to address that through trying to encourage more dual enrollment, looking at adult learners. You know, those were things that were part of our last strategic plan, and we're seeing the dividends or seeing results from the dual enrollment work and some of those initiatives that we've had. And, you know, NMC is kind of countering this demographic trend in terms of our enrollment. So you look at the last 3 years, we're approaching our 9th semester in a row of enrollment growth in the summer. Here would make nine semesters, and we are continuing that work with our enrollment marketing strategy, and our strategic growth plan addresses enrollment as well. And of course, you know, we've benefited from these state tuition programs like Community College Guarantee and Reconnect, and we encourage the state to continue funding those. Okay, enough on the industry outlook, shifting to NMC's budget realities and where our operating revenues come from. Just important to, remind the board that 92% of our funds, our operating funds, come from these three sources. Part of that, I will say, is by choice. Our general fund doesn't rely on the auxiliary funds that we have, the housing money, or the housing operation, the cafeteria, the Denos, IAF, and those programs are all self-supporting from a budget structure standpoint, which I think is just important to be aware of, that outside of the general fund, we have, all these other operations that are benefiting the college. And, for example, I'll just dig in a little bit to say, like with the apartments, we were able to, because we were reserving that money and not relying on it in our operating fund, we had the ability to go buy additional apartments when the opportunity came up a couple of years ago. Now, when you look at NMC's revenues as a whole, these categories represent about 62% of our revenues. But again, focusing back on the operating budget, we know that about half of our money is coming from tuition and fees. And looking at enrollment next year, we know that there's not any brand new state programs kicking off. We've experienced the first full year of Community College Guarantee. Reconnect's, I think, a mature program at this point. And so I think what we're projecting is that demographic expectation of things starting to plateau. Of course, we'd be happy to see it another year of enrollment growth, but this is just based on the data that we have at hand. Along with that, we are proposing a 3% tuition increase, which I'll get to on another slide. And then on the state funding side, we have shared with you that we don't expect any increase. We're continuing with that assumption for now, and we hope to find out more on that in June. We also don't plan on the items funding bucket because we've been promised that before and it hasn't come. So if it does pass, that's certainly budget upside that could help offset some of our deferred maintenance costs in the budget currently. And then property taxes. I would say there's probably a little upside to that as well. We're going to find out in April where taxable values are for Grand Traverse County and be able to have a much tighter prediction on that piece. So that's one that I think has some potential upside, but it's really, we're not certain where that's going to be yet. Okay. On the expense side, wages make up about 65% of our budget. That's our people doing the great work for the college. And what we have in the budget are the commitments we've already agreed to. That includes the scale changes that are in our faculty and SEIU bargaining agreements. We have budgeted for similar scale changes for the non-union groups listed there. And step increases for all eligible staff, faculty, and adjuncts. That's, I think it depends on which unit you're part of or which scale you're on, but many of the different groups have a step system as well to encourage people to stay and grow with the college. We do have one new position right now in the budget, and that's our new aviation instructor, which was always part of this growth plan. We've opened up to more students with the aviation program, and there's been a need expressed to that now is the time to look at this instructor. So we are looking at that still, but that's currently in the budget, but has not been formally approved through our normal process of approving new employees. So I will mention that. And then we also have another pretty substantial increase in health insurance based on what we've been seeing with the market and the experience we've had on our self-funded plan. And then our non-labor expenses, these represent almost 30% of our budget. Just to call out a couple line items, we have the purchase services line item, which you've probably seen over time continue to grow. And a lot of that is because of our setup with EduStaff and that our contracted adjuncts and supplementals are running through that line item versus the labor line. So we have some increases for the contracted adjuncts and supplementals based on expected attrition of adjuncts and supplementals that are currently employed by NMC. And that offsetting decrease in labor should offset the increase in this line. And then I want to point out here too, because this is an area that I see as opportunity to get our budget balance, but we did put in everything that was requested, every dollar that's been requested by every department on the non-labor side is right now part of this budget. Some of that is strategic plan. We've asked people to highlight whether that's, the connection to the strategic plan. And we ask people to put in commentary to help us understand, what it is specifically that they're asking for in the budget. Now's the time where we're going to take all that, analyze it, look at department by department, maybe line by line, and try to understand what the priorities are, and help maybe shave some of the requests off. So, lastly, again with the general fund budget being isolated, we have these transfers out to different funds that help support our debt service, our maintenance and technology, strategic fund, those things. So this transfers category of representing about 8% of our expenses has a new debt service line item for the anticipated bond issuance that we're going to look at today, but I think have some further discussion about how much we're going to borrow there, because that does in fact impact how much we need to budget for in the general fund based on how much we borrow. So that sort of was replaced, that new debt service line replaced this line item we had last year that was for a transfer for new capital projects. So that transfer will occur at the end of this fiscal year. And so we will have that initial $750, but in order to make room for this new debt service line, we pulled back on that transfer category. And then we did increase some transfers for deferred maintenance, technology, and strat fund. Okay. So what I've presented to you today is we have a budgeted deficit of $538,000. It's not an alarming deficit. It's not abnormal at this time of the year, but it does mean we have more work to do to go back and prioritize. So I think it's a healthy exercise. There's more tweaking to do on the revenue variables as well. And I do want to explicitly say there's, because we talked about this at a different board meeting and the board took action, that there are no Boardman Lake proceed funds supporting the general fund. Okay, second to last slide here. Tuition rate scenarios. We always present to you some different scenarios and try to show you what it would mean for the students. And I do want to say too, what this is really showing you is that sticker price, the price, the charge, the debit on their the student's tuition statement. But as you all know, there's all sorts of different state program funding that comes in credits and offsets that charge. So it's very complex when you look at how many of our students are getting what buckets of funding, but I think we can confidently say that most all students are getting some form of aid. Very few students pay the full sticker price, so to speak, of attending college here at NMC because of the Pell Grants, we have 1,200 students, over 1,200 students of our 3,500 get Pell. We have 300 that were on Community College Guarantee last year. I would venture to say, we don't have the numbers this year yet, but it's probably double that. Reconnect, we had 255. We have TIP, which is, actually, I won't even try to describe what TIP is, but we have 422 students on that. And then we have 600 dual enrollment students. So those students are being covered by their respective schools. So the green is the current sticker price, and what we propose is that 3% increase, which would have a $49 impact on a student statement if they took all 30, or if they took 30 credits for a full year. And then this last slide here is just to share where we're at and what the next steps are. As I mentioned before, we're going to do a lot of crunching and analyzing, looking at historical trend. A lot of that's on the expense side. The labor side of the budget, in my view, is pretty well tuned, I guess. We don't have a lot of room for new positions this year. Given the current variables that we're at, but that can always change and fluctuate, and we'll be doing that work in the next 2 to 3 months. We'll get that key information about property taxes next month, and then I'll do another update in May, and then we have a couple town hall presentations that we do for the community, for all those people in the community interested about NMC's budget. And then we'll ask you to approve the budget and tuition rates in June. Let me pause and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Troy. I'm going to jump in real quick with a question and a reminder to the board real quick too. Any interest, the proceeds from the sale of the Boardman campus that is in a board-directed fund, any interest or income as a result of that stays within the fund, or does that show up in the general fund's interest income?
Good question. We did not budget for the interest in the general fund. So that interest would be accumulating to continue to be used for the same purpose of the principal.
Okay, and a quick reminder to the board that this is the first crack at it for Troy, an introduction to these things, and I think there's a lot of that we could dive into, but also to give a little bit of pause, knowing that the conversation is going to evolve. And Kennard.
For a number of years now, you've been giving the board a report on all of the reserves the college has. Could you expand on that a little this year and show us what transfers you expect out for fiscal 27 and where you expect to end up with those reserves at the end of fiscal 27?
Yeah, I can speak. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I can just speak in general. I know that we, for instance, with the strategic fund, I right now have a budgeted transfer that's about $100,000 higher than normal because we want to try to find some funds to help address strategic initiatives. So it's sort of a way of setting that money aside. With technology, we increased that by $100,000. Right now, I think the budgeted target is $750,000 a year. We're paying for equipment replacement, and David will tell you that there's really not. We need more money than that because technology's a great need, and we have some big projects coming up.
So if you could get those to us, at least by the May meeting, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great. They were last in the November board packet, and so we'll usually report on those again after the close of the fiscal year. But I could also look at projecting out fiscal 26. So I will do that.
Thank you. Jody?
Two, and they're just yes or no questions. The revenues that are projected in this initial draft, do they anticipate that 3% proposed increase to tuition?
The revenues do, yeah. The tuition and fees do expect that.
And then what, for the debt service associated with the geothermal project, what principal amount was anticipated resulting in those debt service payments?
It was based on the 15 million principal.
Thank you.
Yes. And that line item is, I believe, based on 15 million, at 5%, I think it was a $962,000 a year debt service. So we could lower that through putting more down.
Laura?
First of all, I am not concerned about this budget at all. I'm very impressed to see it. We have had a lot of input to it that I've heard over and over tonight, that the budget supports our strategic plan. Our strategic plan has big audacious goals in it, that this is not reliant on our sale of Boardman Lake campus, and yet we are starting out with only a $500,000 deficit, and I've seen worse. So I'm very impressed by this budget, to be candid, and I'm not at all concerned about it, to be honest. But I am interested, is there a concerning area in the budget to you? Is there an area that you think we should have on our radar as we develop this budget that you've got your eye on, or that concerns you a little bit?
I think that my general concern, one of the charts really kind of calls this out in the board packet, but we are high on the list in terms of reliance on tuition revenue.
Yep.
So that means when we have volatile enrollment, we're going to feel that pain a little bit more.
Right.
So that generally gives me more concern. We always talk about diversifying revenues, and you know, I think it's something we've done a good job at. But I think that just continues to speak to that need to do that, and not only with, you know, these revenues outside of these three buckets. I think we have to continue to look at property tax opportunities, you know, when the timing is right. And we have a continuously eroding millage rate that I think we've lost, you know, 0.6 mils, which could have a 3 to 4 million, I think even higher than that, annual impact on our budget.
Well, that feedback is incredibly helpful. There's not a lot we can do about, well, I take that back. I mean, there are things we can do on enrollment, and we're doing it. Where it helps as a board member is remembering that when we have requests that come before us that impact an investment in something that might impact enrollment, like a marketing investment or human resources or something that can impact that enrollment, it's good to know where the CFO's concern is, so that when we make decisions that could support the budget to offset those potential areas, that's good to know. Thank you.
Kenner.
It is helpful. John Von Wagner, K-12 superintendent, has said that TCAPS has been able to maintain their enrollment despite the declining birth rate because they are attracting students from other districts. And of course, TCAPS is one of the principal sources of students for NMC. So that's an encouraging sign of the population.
It's great.
Thank you. Nick.
Troy, just to also piggyback on Jody's question, you said that the geothermal project, we're budgeting at the 15 million with 5 million from Boardman Lake, which gives us a debt servicing cost of 962.
Correct.
If we were to next month bring forth another 5 million from Boardman Lake, that would probably take that down to the 600 range.
I'd have to look. I was actually just sent that information today from PFM, and so I'd like to put that together to show the board the impact of what that would look like. But I do believe it would go down at least a couple $100,000, if not a few $100,000, if you put another 5 million on top of that.
Ken.
Yeah, just to put a couple of pieces together from what I've been hearing here. The issue of generating more tuition revenue and the issue of distinctive programs, and then we get into marketing. It seems to me that we do have a number of distinctive programs that, especially if they're drawing from outside of the district or the state, could have a lot to do with improving our revenue situation. And I go back to your very first slide about the intense competition among institutions. That's where the distinctive programs come in. And when I think about them, a marine tech, for example, given the market for graduates, is a program that should have so many more students from around the country than it does now. And I'm not blaming anybody. I have no idea how one does the effective communications and marketing of that, but that's something we've got to get a handle on. Even the maritime certificate in culinary should have a large number of very interested and involved students. And these could all be bringing in resources. The drone program, I mean, you've got several of them that should be bringing in a lot more students than we're getting. And that would help to address a couple of big problems here.
I think that's right. I mean, we charge different rates based on residency. So, and we do those programs. I know culinary, when we looked at it 3 or 4 years ago, around half some semesters. Sometimes it was 25% coming from out of district, but sometimes, so it was really volatile with culinary. I think aviation would tell you they almost always get 75% of their students from outside of the region. A lot of them come from this belt line, by Lansing. And maritime, we draw a ton of students from Louisiana for the deck program because we have a pilotage program. And so that's one area where we've looked at with the water studies recruiter and tried to replicate. So I think that's an example of where we are trying to address that concern you just raised. But I think it's a good point that we have to keep that top of mind.
Okay, any other questions for Troy? Exciting stuff, Troy. Thank you so much for this. And we look forward to a lot more to come soon. Thank you. Now is the time for public input. Lynn, do we have any? None. Okay, we'll move on. President Nisley, it is time for your update.
I'd like to share 5 things tonight. One is just to let you know that the Boardman Lake campus sale is proceeding, and I think everyone's aware we at least have a pretty firm but yet tentative closing date of April 15th, and our intention per the tribe's request is that we bring together both the tribal council and you as the Board of Trustees for that signing of the final documents on April 15th, and Lynn will be getting details as that comes near. So they have completed their phase 2 environmental assessment. There's nothing that concerns them there, but really we're just progressing through that final bit of title work and closing documents. So you shouldn't be worried about being pushed from the April 2nd to the April 15th. It's more to accommodate their schedules. I would like to highlight, and I think I have before, Troy's been doing a tremendous amount of work over this past month, and literally every day from legal counsel, we're getting requests for this document, that document, just a whole lot of administrative detail that's going into this process. And we've obviously had some distinct phases as we've negotiated, as we've moved into the purchase agreement phase, and now really into that title work and closing document phase. I'd also hold up, Diana has worked tremendously hard with all of our Boardman Lake campus partners who are going to obviously need to move out of there. And we're trying to do our best to role model that people first strategic driver and make sure we're not just approaching it as a facilities issue, but how do we make sure we're mindful that we're asking people to make some big changes and shifting their offices and workplaces. The second piece, I'm sure everyone is aware that this last month, the foundation board voted unanimously to approve us moving forward with a campaign. And that's really a big deal. And I know that everyone knows that, but I think it bears repeating. It shows tremendous support for the college, support from our foundation board, and obviously the trust and faith or the confidence they have in us being able to deliver on that campaign. So a big thank you to the entire foundation board. The two key things that Catherine and the foundation team are beginning to work on is securing our campaign council, which our intention is to continue working with the Winkler Group, who we've worked with so far. And second, beginning to form the steering committee, which will allow us to begin the planning phase, because this will be a big undertaking spread out over almost the next 5 years. But a big congratulations to Catherine and the foundation team and the foundation board for supporting us in that. The third, while it was in the board packet, I do want to hold it up, and Troy alluded to it. Right now, our summer enrollment is looking like a 12.1% increase over last year, which is, as Troy mentioned, would be our 9th consecutive semester. And Troy also mentioned, and I want to highlight probably 3 key reasons why we can say we've had 9 consecutive semesters. We've got some great policies in place, which we need to thank our governor and our legislators, things like the community college guarantee and reconnect. Also, the work that we're doing internally, Todd and his team, Diana, especially the work around enrollment management, and especially our dual enrollment, and also the branding work, I think also show explicit, deliberate efforts that we've made. And I hold those up as things that we should be proud of. I also want to say, and I don't want to raise this as an alarm, but just as a yellow flag, and as Troy also shared that yellow flag with you, but if you didn't pick up on the yellow flag, I want to tell you it's a yellow flag. And it's this notion of demographics. And you've probably heard this language of enrollment cliff. And I want to be sure that you understand what that means for us. That this last year, there were only 104,000 high school graduates in the state of Michigan. And what we know from demographics, this isn't just forecasting, these are real numbers based on birth rates, that by 2041, that's going to continue to decline, and it's going to go down to about 85,000. So in other words, we're going to lose about 15 or 20,000 high school graduates in the next 15 years. In other words, we're going to have 15 consecutive years of declining numbers of high school graduates. And we know that there's even fewer high school graduates who are going to college. So again, I just share that so that you temper when we've been telling you we've had 3 semesters, 4 semesters, 8 semesters, 9 semesters of growth. That isn't going to continue forever, and I don't just say that to hedge my bets. I say it because the demographic reality is that doesn't require any action on your behalf. We've got the actions built into the strategic plan, things like the NOMI Act, the Northern Michigan Attainment Collaborative, things of that nature, which are allowing us to refocus or focus attention on adult learners away from that maybe over-reliance on the traditional or 18 to 21-year-olds. But the good news for summer is 12.1%. I'll leave you with that. The fourth thing is I do want to call out 2 bits of very positive news regarding the college and our community. On any given day, I could proudly tell you about things that are going on, but over this last month, I think there's 2 that are really worthwhile. One is to celebrate Jeff Cobb and our music programs. This last month, actually in the last couple of weeks, Jeff and our combined choirs sang with the TC Philharmonic over at Interlochen. And there were over 250 artists, about 125 of our choir members with 100 TC Philharmonic members on stage to a packed Corson auditorium. They were performing Brahms' Requiem, probably one of the most difficult yet beautiful pieces that you could ever hear from a choir. To be able to hold NMC like that up in public is just a tremendous asset. The other is to highlight our International Affairs Forum. And just this last week, we had an IAF event. It was based on space, in other words, outer space. where we normally talk about geopolitical boundaries in countries, where we're talking more about outer space. But what I want to hold up there is once a year, Alex Tank, as our director, throws the keys to our student leadership team and allows them to plan, organize, and execute that event. We've heard from the World Affairs Council that we're probably the only IAF or World Affairs Council-like organization in the country that has a student-led program. I think that is just a tremendous asset to Alex's courage and also his desire to, in an extracurricular kind of way, support experiential learning even in our student groups like the IAF student leadership team. I'd be remiss, though, when I'm talking about IAF, if I didn't acknowledge, I think everyone is aware that we had a passing of one of our IAF advisory board members, Stan Otto. Stan has been a tremendous asset to the IAF over the last decade. He had almost 30 years of working overseas. He was an incredibly renowned and respected member of the Foreign Service. And we were incredibly fortunate to have him here with our advisory board over the last 10 years. Unfortunately, as I said, he's passed away. The last thing that I'd highlight, and I've shared this with Mark already, is MCCA informed us that only 2 states, Michigan and Texas, have been selected by the Aspen Institute to form what they're referring to as a president and trustee collaborative around student success. The idea is to really help us with that community college 3.0 or focus on student success. So the idea is let's bring together the college president, the college board of trustees chair, and one other board member. So if you have interest, let us know to join Mark and myself. There are 4 specifically designed times throughout the next year that we'll be pulling together with the Aspen Institute to help us focus on the work that we're doing, but how do we do it even better? In other words, how do we try to influence those desired outcomes around student success? And I think the very last thing I'll say is just, if you weren't sure why it was in front of you, you've got the Bay Life magazine, and please take a look at that. If you haven't seen already, there's about a 10-page spread which celebrates our 75th and a tremendous amount of pride I think you'll have reading through that. I think I'll stop there and look if there's any questions or comments.
Hold on.
Nick, a comment, reminder really, because I know you're already on it. When Brandy was here in front of the board a few months ago, I brought it up to her and she had mentioned that the MCCA is looking at revisiting the Michigan Community College Act that hasn't been revised in a long time. It couldn't help but come to the top of my mind as you're talking about this enrollment cliff, that enhancing that, especially in the area as to how colleges expand their geographical footprint without having to go to taxpayers. There's got to be a better way. MCCA is the perfect group to do it. So if in your leadership with MCCA and our board liaisons, and is that you, Pam? Yeah. To MCCA, if we could please keep our foot on the gas on this and hold them to this, I think it's really, really important for us to be able to look at our surrounding counties to get them into our service area at the in-district rate and support, because that enrollment cliff, because those surrounding counties have an enormous amount of non-high school students that would do that. So it's just a long-winded way of saying, please stay on MCCA in your leadership to open that back up.
Yeah, maybe Pam and I can put it on our next
And there are
meeting
other
to.
things as well that are problematic that need to be addressed.
Within that, yeah,
Yes.
agreed. And Brandy did say it's in their, it's on their plate this year, but I don't know if it actually is making the legislative agenda that they
No, it
said.
did not.
But it's kind of a big deal, in my opinion.
Message heard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nick. And for the sake of moving the agenda along, it's about 7:30. I'm just going to do a quick, for my chair report, a quick reminder. First of all, thank you, trustees, for the amount of time that you spend on moving along our mission and values and supporting our students. And April is an exceptional month where we have a lot of opportunity to participate. And so quick reminder, April 11th, open ship, 17th, the scholarship celebration, which I need to send back my RSVP card. I'll do that tomorrow. Yes, I'm coming. Yes. And then on the 18th, so the next day, the hero race, the 24th, the Taste of Success, and then the big day on the 25th, which is our first of 3 main events, the block party. So look forward to the board's participation and seeing you all at these events. And with that, we are going to move on to the consent items. And I wanted to ask first, is there any board member that would like to move any of the consent items to the regular agenda for discussion and questions?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the consent items. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay, support Laura. Thank you, Kennard, for the motion. And any discussion? And can I get a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. And the consent agenda moves forward. Next, we are going to our action items, and we are going to approve a slate of policy changes. Can I get a motion to approve the recommended adoption of the following board policies on the first reading basis?
So moved.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for the support, Ken. And any discussion? None? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. And that motion moves forward. Thank you. Next, we have the recommendation for authorization. I'm asking for a motion for authorization for the administration to enter into a 2-year contract with Sentinel-1 to provide managed detection and response with identity management at a cost of $107,923.68.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Kennard. Support?
Support.
Support, Laura. Thank you. Any discussion? None? Okay. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. And the motion carries. Thank you. With that, I wanted to check in. Lynn, do we have any follow-up?
I'll send along the 9 durable skills document.
Okay. And any other follow-up from the board for Lynn?
Oh, reserve, thank you. I do have that noted.
Okay, great.
Reserve transfers.
Okay, anything else? All right, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.